Hello everyone, this is Dan Weisberg and I'm the National Director for the TutorMate program here at Innovations for Learning. We have over 800 folks registered across the country and about over 300 or 400 right now have signed in. I know we'll be getting a few more folks signing in over the next few minutes. We're very glad to have you with us and we appreciate your taking the time to be here and marking the end of another great year here at Innovations for Learning with the TutorMate program. We do have a very full agenda for this webinar. We are aiming to be done at the top of the hour, so let's quickly review what we have on tap. First, we'll give shout-outs to our staff and then welcome Joe Echevarria from the My Brother's Keeper Alliance. Then we'll highlight some of the terrific media and other recognition which have come our way this past year. We'll give you an update about our plans to partner with new school districts. Then this year's Teacher of the Year, Pam Caswell from Denver Public Schools, will talk a little bit about what it's like to be a TutorMate classroom teacher. We'll acquaint you with some of the TutorMate improvements planned for this coming fall. Then we'll recognize some of you, our exemplary tutors and our tutoring organizational partners. We'll talk a little bit about the fall timeline for the upcoming school year, and then we'll cap it off with our executive director and founder, Seth Weinberger, who will make some remarks and answer your questions. First, a quick shout out to those of you on the TutorMate headquarters staff here in this picture. Many of you on the line today know the folks pictured here very, very well, at least on a virtual basis. Heather and Risa are our tutoring coordinators. Carrie and I focus, let me make sure that's closed. Heather and I focus on recruiting and onboarding tutor organizations. Marissa is our development director, managing grant writing, fundraising, and social media. Jackie, our director of TutorMate operations, leads an amazing team of chat desk support staff with Eugene, Letitia, and Chris. Plus, parenthetically, Jackie is a talented graphics artist as well and put together these terrific PowerPoints. Thank you, Jackie. As tutors know, we could not operate this program successfully without the chat desk. On behalf of all of our tutors and teachers and students, let me express our huge thanks to Jackie and to her team in particular. We also want to recognize our equally critically important program ambassadors out in the field, whom you see pictured here, led by Kim Witten, our National Director for Implementation and School Support. This great team ensures that teachers understand how to manage the TutorMate system so that it is both reliable for tutors and simultaneously non-intrusive for teachers. This is not an easy balance to achieve, but this amazing team does make it possible. If you don't see your own city noted, this is because we have vacancies in Dallas, Charlotte, and Seattle. As for Denver and Reynoldsburg, we need to thank Nicole Capage-Brown and Chris Brudzinski from the Denver Public Schools Foundation and Mile High United Way, as well as Mia Brower from Reynoldsburg Public Schools, all for playing very vital roles in the successful deployment of TutorMate in their respective cities. Finally, we can't omit recognizing and thanking our tremendous team of software developers, led by Chief Technology Officer Brian Hides. This team has created and maintained the software code behind the TutorMate system, and they deserve enormous credit for improving our success rates and for improving the quality of our TutorMate application and its interface. Thank you immensely, IFL development team. We're now going to turn to our very special guest today, the guest portion of the webinar, and welcome Joe Echevarria. By way of introduction, everyone should know that in May of 2015, President Obama launched the My Brother's Keeper Alliance to address persistent opportunity gaps faced by boys and young men of color. It was a spin-off of a similar initiative managed by the White House itself over the prior few years. At the launch ceremony pictured here, President Obama put special focus on what those of us on the call today understand quite well, the importance of having children reading on grade level by the 3rd grade. You will see our special guest today, in fact, Joe Echevarria, is seated to the left of President Obama in this picture. One thing that was especially exciting for us here was to have our TutorMate program in the My Brother's Keeper Alliance corporate playbook that you'll see pictured here. There are just a very few mentoring programs that received a spotlight in that playbook, so we were honored to have been included amongst that small club. You can find the hyperlink here to see the complete corporate playbook. You're encouraged to share with others who might be working at large employers where they may be seeking new and constructive ways to give back. With that, I want to welcome our very special guest, Joe Echevarria. Joe, are you able to hear me okay?
I hear you great.
Great, thank you. Quick other few points about your background. After retiring from a 37-year career at Deloitte, including 5 years as its CEO, President Obama announced in May of last year that Joe would become the first board chair and the interim CEO of the My Brother's Keeper Alliance. Joe has joined with other CEOs to tackle some of the country's biggest challenges through participation in both the Fix the Debt campaign and with the Business Roundtable. Joe was a panelist for the 2012 White House Forum on Women in the Economy. He was a keynote speaker at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's annual Capital Markets Summit. He was recently named to the board of directors of Bank of New York Mellon. He serves on its Audit, Finance, and Corporate Social Responsibility committees. And finally, he received a BBA from the University of Miami in 1978. He currently serves on the Business Administration School Board of Overseas at that institution. He's also a member of the Orange Bowl Committee, and Joe and his wife have 3 children. So, Joe, I'm going to start off by asking you to address a little bit, if you could, to tell us about the, I have a 2-part question, basically. Can you talk to us about the My Brother's Keepers Alliance mission and its goals? And secondly, let us know how your own childhood experience growing up in the South Bronx factored into your participation to accept President Obama's appointment to become its first board chair.
Sure, Dan. Be delighted to. And first, my thanks to all of you for participating in something like TutorMate. It's an outstanding organization recognized by not just myself, but by the President for its great work. So my own personal shout out to all of you. So quickly, in terms of the mission of My Brother's Keeper, as the President basically described when I was sitting with him back in, seems like ages ago, but it probably was December of 2013. We were talking about a couple of opportunities that he wanted me to consider. His idea of what the mission would be was, in short strokes, is to make the American dream available to all boys and young men of color with the same level of prominence that it is available to all Americans. And you talked a little bit about the opportunity gaps, and that's essentially what his vision was about. And if you took it one level below that, the study that the President did that was released shortly thereafter in February of 2014, sort of identified 6 points where intervention would be required in order for that to be true for this population. And keeping in mind the demographic is boys and young men of color, but more specifically, it's those who are from or living in low-income households. And so you have to put those 2 thoughts together when you think of our population. And simply stated, it was around how many words they hear, what their literacy is, about education, skills, and staying connected. So I think of this through a business lens. So if you think of all of us in a classic business, supply and demand, we wanted to make sure that we were creating opportunities for these kids to stay connected. And connected is defined that as they move into adolescence and early adulthood, they're either employed in an opportunity that they can climb a corporate ladder or a not-for-profit ladder, or military, you pick, something where they have opportunity, or they're in education, which by default means they're not in other places that would be less beneficial to themselves, certainly not incarcerated for crimes, etc. So that really was the objective. I think the second part of your question was, what about me personally? And as I was looking through the opportunities that the President was discussing back then, this one resonated with me for a couple of reasons. Reason one was it was the first time in my life where I could actually move from making a buck to making a difference. Literally from the first job I ever had, which was back in my 12, 13 years old, it was all about making a dollar. And as I got older, it just became about making dollars not only for myself but for others, whether those were corporations, partners, shareholders. And this one struck me as an opportunity to make a difference. Secondly, I wanted to do something that would be sustainable beyond the presidency. Obviously, at that time, he had about 2 years to go in his term, and this is something that's going to be part of the President's Foundation. He and the First Lady will put this as one of their pillars, along with a few other things. So it's sort of the combination in terms of a choice. It resonated with me because I was one of these kids. I was, obviously Hispanic, Puerto Rican from the South Bronx. I grew up in low-income household. Single parent. Parents were divorced at a very young age. My mom worked 2 jobs and got by. And we lived literally in what, at that time and today, is one of the highest crime rate neighborhoods in New York. So if you combine that with what this opportunity was, and the last piece was, believe it or not, our literacy goal is reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. Why? Because you're 13 times more likely to graduate from high school if you can actually reach that benchmark. In the 3rd grade, I was not reading at that level. And how do I know that? Because I got put into a special, we thought of it as remedial, but they took all the kids who were having difficulty reading and learning math into a smaller group of kids to try to get advanced. I was one of those kids. So my life changed essentially at that pivot point in the pillar. So if you put all that together, that's how I wound up doing this particular opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. So you just, at the very end there, you touched a little bit about 3rd grade reading. Can you elaborate a bit? I'm sure you probably come to understand more about the issue as you've joined My Brother's Keeper Alliance. What does the data you've seen tell you specifically? What level of gravity does the MBK Alliance attach to that issue of early grade reading proficiency? Because it's of interest to everybody on today's call, no doubt about that. And maybe how does it contrast with some of the other stages that the Alliance has identified?
Well, if you think of in terms of which is one of the reasons why we partnering with this organization as part of MBK. Early childhood, entering school ready to learn. The data clearly demonstrates that if you start off as a minority, a boy, young man of color, in a low-income household, you will more likely than not have heard 30 million less words than a comparable individual. I want you to process that, 30 million less words. That translates to you not being ready for school, and more likely than not, you not becoming reading proficient as you enter the school system and as you progress. The data clearly shows that the 3rd grade, for reasons that we don't have enough time to get into, is the pivot point in terms of whether you actually make it or not. And over 80% of the boys that are at risk here read below a 3rd grade level. When you combine that with poverty, like I said before, they're 14 times less likely to graduate from high school. Once you don't graduate from high school, you don't stay connected disproportionately. So the high school graduation rate is 70% less. The ability to get employed in a meaningful employment is 50% less. It just sort of plays its way through the dynamics. So from our standpoint, there's two ends that we're focused on. We're focusing on early childhood, but really the reading piece, the first two, and then we're focusing on making sure that there's job opportunities or education opportunities so we can take care of both sides of the spectrum here. So reading, believe it or not, like it or not, the data suggests that that is the critical component in determining the probabilities of one of these kids having the opportunities. So it's that simple.
Great. Thank you, Joe. So that was a bit of a discussion about the ends, our mission here, of course, and the aligns certainly with what our own analysis has taught us here at IFL. So that was a discussion on the ends. Our means here as an organization are twofold. Number one, it's around using technology, and number two, it's around using volunteers. So I want to ask you a question about each of those two things as well. First, on technology. I know you've spoken at the Brussels Forum and other settings about its dramatic impact upon the global workforce, the impact of the internet. How about in the arena, a little bit more narrowly, of mentorship for at-risk youth? We hope that TutorMate is one example, certainly, but more broadly, have you seen the internet begin to achieve its potential as a constructive force in the world of mentorship?
That's a tough one, because that one is much more editorial than it is based on a lot of data and research. All I can tell you at the moment is that the program that you're running, for example, is one of the few that actually is using current technology to sort of advance a mentorship platform, any sort of social giving platform, quite frankly, that doesn't involve pure economics. We actually can create engagement. I think that the industry as a whole, when I say the industry, the people who are sitting around mentorship or sitting around reading proficiency, you pick, are at the very, very early stages, though, primarily because of economics, because the ability to use technology is rooted in, one, want and desire, and two, working capital.
Mm-hmm.
The reason businesses are high use of technology is because it drives productivity, and productivity creates more working capital. That's not the case in some of the other organizations that we deal with, particularly governmental organizations. They are always steps behind the corporate players in terms of their tech investments. And so I actually think what you're doing is leading edge in the scheme of where we are today. Do I think there's more to do? Absolutely. Technology moves at a speed, as everybody on this call knows, that's exponentially higher. The last piece of data I saw that right now we move in 5-year increments that were the equivalent of 120-year increments back in the 1930s. So if you just think of that, 120 versus 5, that's quite a delta. And the infrastructure that fits in the not-for-profit world or in the federal government world or the state government world, which includes school systems, is nowhere near that level of speed. So early days, in my view, early days. Lots of potential, but early days.
Great, great. And thank you for the compliment. We're certainly proud to be part of that leading edge in terms of our own work. The related question that I mentioned is about volunteerism. This Monday, the annual Points of Light Conference kicks off. This particular year, it'll be in Detroit, one of our most active TutorMate cities. And thank you, Detroit tutors who are on the call today. We'll see you next Monday. Joe, tell us about the trends you've seen around corporate volunteerism and also around skills-based volunteering. What guidance do you have for large for-profit companies, maybe in promoting volunteerism in the workplace? Should they be directing all their staff into one or two initiatives, or should they invite their staff to choose from a broad menu? And maybe even, would a highly trained CPA or engineer be wise to spend their time mentoring a first or second grader in basic reading skills, even if it doesn't specifically leverage their professional skills?
Yeah, and those are all questions that still today corporate businesses are still trying to wrestle with. I think there's a movement afoot to use the framing of skills-based volunteerism,
yes.
Primarily because when you sit in the seats that I've sat in my past life and the people I was fortunate to be around, it just lines up in your mind that you would rather be taking your resources, the assets that you have, which tend to be the people that you have are the most important asset, obviously, and using them where they have the highest levels of competencies and therefore getting the best returns, because that's just the way the corporate mindset works. It's the most efficient method, and therefore it must be the most effective method. I think the one thing that we have been a bit short-sighted on, and when I say we, the collective we, all of us who are in business, is that we think of what somebody's skill is in terms of what their formal training is or what the job they currently do is. But when you get into volunteerism, your skill really should be about the human skill, not just their professional skill. So yes, there are CPAs. I happen to be a CPA. And yes, my trade might have been doing accounting and auditing and taxes, etc. But that really wasn't who I was as a person. So what they really should be benefiting from is who I was as a person and what things do I have a passion about doing beyond accounting and auditing and tax. Because that's really where the most efficient and effective use of the time would be. So what do I mean? There are people who are very great public speakers. There are people who, outside of their core competency, whether it be accounting or engineering, are artists, musicians. You pick all the different things you do with your life that you are quite passionate about. You just don't happen to do it for a for-profit orientation. It doesn't mean you're any less effective of it. Because I think organizations would benefit from allowing people to do the things they are passionate at in volunteerism, as opposed to assuming that the best use of their time would be their competency that they have. While that is the model, I think it's a bit narrow, and it doesn't touch on the human element of it. And I learned this. We in my old firm at Deloitte, we at Bank of New York, which I sit on the board of, we at Pfizer, which I sit at the board of, we're all moving to this model because it fits our corporate, the way we run businesses. But I do think it's not the most effective use, because once you leave the business setting, people want to do things they're passionate about. And some people are passionate about engaging with youth, children, you pick. Some people are passionate about the environment. They may not be working in that, but they have passions around it. They'd be better served doing something around the environment and volunteerism than perhaps doing auditing or accounting at some level. So I actually think that the next step will be thinking about the person that you're deploying out there and letting them do the things that they are passionate about. And it'll be much more effective. But we're not there yet. When I say the collective we in business are not there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just with analysis of the sort that you just provided, I think that will certainly help us get there. You're certainly a well-recognized leader, and I think it's an opinion that resonates with us here as we reach out to more and more companies. We're at 100 and almost 140 this year, and certainly we think that although our volunteers are just working with 6- and 7-year-old students, that they're passionate about that, and that brings them a lot of satisfaction back into their own jobs, and it certainly impacts their productivity in the workplace, we suspect. We're about out of time. I do want to just ask on a more personal level, because obviously you've just achieved a great deal in your own business career. Are there any book recommendations, fiction, nonfiction, that you might just want to provide to our audience in case they're interested in picking up a good book this summer as the days are long right now?
Well, reading is such a personal thing. Again, so I could tell you some book recommendation things I like, but I think a tidbit of being an old person and having done reading from a young level, what got me to read and the things I would tell you is just two things. One is, read things you're really interested in. That goes without saying. I wouldn't read a bunch of business books unless you're really interested in it. Read what you're interested in, and there's two rules I like to apply. Rule number one is, take your age, minus 100 from it. So 100 in my case, I'm 60. That's 40. That means I only allow myself to invest 40 pages into reading a book. And if I don't like it after 40 pages, I don't go back to it. Life's too short. Okay? And as you're younger, you have a little more runway in that math. Okay? And it serves me well. One of my professors back in school taught me that rule, and it has served me well. So I would leave you with that. Just pick things you read. The second thing is learn. From whatever you read, learn something. You can read a great, what they call beach novel, and you can learn an awful lot about cultures and geographies. Just learn a little bit, no matter what you're reading. But I would tell you that 100 minus your age, that's the amount of time to invest in it. Okay,
wonderful. Here's a quickie. One audience member did send in a question just via the interface, the GoToWebinar interface, and that tutor said, our company is not as evolved as Deloitte with their volunteer commitments. Is there a recommendation about how to get our executive leadership on board with volunteerism in a more substantial way? Any thoughts there?
The best way to effectuate change in any organization, so it happened in my firm in Deloitte, was the people have to come up with something that they think is worthwhile and present that to leadership. And if you present something to leadership that, if in its worst case energizes the workforce, they'll probably go for it. That's why I say, if you can get a group of people to be passionate about something and present that, you'll get some productivity, and leadership will listen to that. It won't listen to one-off things, though. It has to be a larger group of individuals who present it to a leadership organization. That's how Deloitte wound up with many of the things it does today, is the people created that change. I certainly didn't. I heard a lot of ideas, and I picked the ones that I thought sounded the best, but that was based on our people, not me personally.
Terrific. Okay. And our tutoring model lends itself to teams. We form teams from our different corporate partners, as everyone on the call knows. So we usually ask for a minimum of about 10. So at least you've got a decent critical mass there of 10 to start effectuating the sort of change that you mentioned. Any final off-the-cuff thoughts before we let you go, Joe? You have an audience that looks like about 400 people almost. And these are tutors who are, of course, giving back to at-risk kids in their own community. Any other last-minute thoughts?
One last minute thought perhaps I shared occurred to me as I was answering the last question. Again, as you enter the twilight of your biological life, you're always a little bit more reflective. And someone said to me very recently that, you know, you don't get to choose the life that you were given, but you do get to choose how you live it. So please think about what you want to look back on in your life and what you'd be proud of. I can assure you it's not going to be that you did a few more tax returns or that you did a few more audits. It's going to be something that's far bigger than that. And spend a little bit of every day working on that.
Great, great. Thank you so much. With that, we're going to move on to the next section of the program. You're very welcome to stay on. We've got some exciting things happening, but don't feel obligated to do so if you need to get on with the rest of your day. Thank you very much once again, Joe. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And so we're going to move on now to the next section for today's wrap-up webinar, talk a little bit about some of the media and the other recognition that we've received here at TutorMate this past year. Number one, I want to single out a terrific new book called Tap, Click, Read, Growing Readers in a World of Screens. In September, we saw the publication of this book. The co-authors are Lisa Guernsey and Michael Levine, representing New America in Washington, D.C., and the Cooney Center at the Sesame Workshop in New York City. The book provides an excellent guide to the understanding and implications of the digital age as it relates to children's literacy in particular. It's helpful for both educators and parents, and even the public equally. It points to evidence-based solutions which have emerged as part of the fast-changing landscape in recent years. They chose to include a terrific section discussing our work here at IFL with TutorMate, which was very gratifying to us. You can find a lot more info about the book and order it directly as well using the website on the screen, tapclickread.org. Also, in late May, we had terrific news coverage in Dallas from the NBC outlet there, Channel 5. One of our great partners down there is Intuit Software Company, and Jim Buffington, one of their great tutors, was featured in a story about his TutorMate work with a student at Soto Elementary in Dallas. The whole story runs just about 2 minutes, and you can access it with the URL on the screen here that you'll see, IFL, tinycc/IFL Channel 5. I do want to announce that we've got big expansion plans in Dallas as well. The district is very pleased with TutorMate, and they've invited us to as many as 9 new buildings, up from 5 today. So we may end up this year, a year from now, with 14 new schools. So those of you in Dallas, start thinking about who you can help us bring into the program, because our recruitment needs are going to be going up substantially for this coming fall, which is a positive thing overall, but certainly reminds us that we might need your help. Also, we launched TutorMate in Santa Ana, California this year with Santa Ana Unified. We had about 18 classrooms or so participating and about 160, 170 tutors there. The Orange County Register provided great coverage of the program in a recent story, which you can see here. The reporter was at the end-of-year event at Madison Elementary, where our wonderful tutors from PIMCO and Cal State Fullerton were also on hand. The URL is noted above. Do check that story out. In Broward County, Florida, the Hollywood Gazette also had a great TutorMate news story this past November, which you can see here. Our program finished its 3rd year in Broward County Schools, which I believe is about the 5th or 6th largest district in the U.S. in terms of student headcount. Beam Fur, one of the local county commissioners, is a tutor there, and he's been very helpful in the press as well as on local public TV. Thank you to Beam, and thank you to all of our Broward County school tutors. You guys are all awesome. Do check out this article. And we're going to move now into the recognition of some of our new school district and our tutoring partners for the year. On the first note, TutorMate corporate partners, you can see here our terrific growth over the last 4 years, being at about 57 organizations in the 12 to 13 school year, then 75, 110. In this past school year, we ended up with 138 separate tutoring organizations, most of which are for-profit companies, of course. We continue to see growth each year as interest builds. Here is a complete list of our tutoring organizations as of the end of this school year. We've already had some add-ons that have committed to join for the fall, like Experian and HarperCollins and some others, JetBlue. Some of these organizations tutored on this list here, they tutor just in one district, but many of them have tutored in multiple districts across the U.S. When that happens, it allows us to scale the TutorMate program more effectively. So very special thanks to our multi-city corporate partners. We do want to emulate that as we move into the new year. And of course, we are a nonprofit, and the TutorMate program depends upon the support of our tutoring partner organizations. So here is a special added thanks to those organizations who funded us during this past school year at or in excess of the $5,000 level. Those of you who are employed by these terrific organizations, please let your management know how grateful we are for their support. If we omitted your company inadvertently here, please accept our apologies. If you are in a company that has a Dollar for Doers program, such as Microsoft or Intuit, or Microsoft, Intel, Google, do know that we count on our funding from this approach, so do remember to record your hours in your company's own systems before the next few weeks are passed. Moving on now, one very large specific or special grant which we received this year came from Boeing to underwrite the costs for adding STEM content, specifically science-related stories about medicine, space, and astronomy and aviation. Those stories just went live a few weeks ago for reading stages 7, 8, and 9. Those of you who did not tutor in recent weeks or were not at these reading stages, you may not have noticed these terrific new stories, but we don't want to let the year end without thanking Boeing for their wonderful commitment to support the program to help us create the best of both worlds, that is by allowing us to promote literacy and STEM simultaneously right at the heart of their intersection. A little bit more about these stories in a few moments. I also want to give a shout out to Janus Capital Group in Denver. We were very lucky this year because many Denver-based Janus Capital volunteers scaled the 14,000-foot peaks in the Rockies to help us raise funds for end-of-year reading books to all of our classrooms across the U.S. This was part of their annual 14er challenge. You can see some of them summiting here. It looks quite fun, although it sort of tires me out just thinking about it, but that's what you get when you approach 60. We thank Janus immensely for scaling these amazing heights in the service of closing the literacy gap across the U.S. Thank you, Janus. Here is a map of our 21 school districts that we expect to see this coming fall. We started the year with 14 districts, and then we finished up this past few weeks with about 18, but we do expect to add Boston, Indianapolis, and Grand Rapids this coming fall. So once again, this map shows all 21 districts in what we expect to be the new map for September, October. So we're finally legal at 21. A special shout out to our 4 new districts for this past school year: Atlanta Public Schools, Jackson Public Schools, Charlotte, Mecklenburg Schools, and Santa Ana Unified in California. We are immensely grateful to all of our tutors from all of these communities for having participated. You are all especially instrumental at proving for the very first time the validity of what it is that we do to our partner school districts. All 4 districts have invited TutorMate to return and to expand, and this is in large measure thanks to your help in making the first year a successful one. So thanks to you. We do plan to add, as I mentioned a moment ago, these 4 new school districts this coming fall: Boston, Grand Rapids, Indianapolis, and we'll include LA as well. Technically, we had a handful of tutors in one LA unified building this year, but it was a late start and just a couple of classrooms. So we are really viewing this coming fall as Los Angeles Unified's first year as coming on board. We always need tutoring organizations in our new cities in particular, so do send us the names of corporate contacts that you might have in these locations, either colleagues at your own companies or perhaps friends of yours or relatives who live in those cities and work for large employers. Let's also mention some of our nonprofit partners who we work with closely. This past year we were partnering with United Ways in Orange County, in Detroit, and in Denver. All these partnerships were immensely valuable. Many of you on this call were recruited to the program with their efforts. Thank you everyone for participating, and thank you to the incredible staff people at these 3 United Ways. Other nonprofits who have been enormously instrumental in promoting our work are seen here as well. These include the Denver Public Schools Foundation, the Commit Partnership in Dallas, Retooling Detroit, and the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. The Points of Life Foundation will include a breakout session about TutorMate this coming Tuesday at its annual conference on volunteerism in Detroit. In fact, this year, we hope that some of you who are in Detroit can attend that conference, which will be held at Cobo Hall starting Monday for 3 days. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Carrie Zakon, the National TutorMate Manager, to move us into the Teacher of the Year segment. Carrie, take it away.
Thanks, Dan, and I want to welcome everyone out there in TutorMate land, and I want to thank everyone for spending this hour with us as we close out another successful year. And I'd like to offer my sincere appreciation and gratitude for the commitment our tutor force brings each week. We here at IFL understand this is no small undertaking, and donating your time makes a significant impact for students, especially as we're about to hear from our Teacher of the Year. And this part of the program is where we take a moment to recognize our hardworking and passionate teachers. And TutorMate exists to support the teachers most responsible for helping students to read. And in that, I'd like to introduce Miss Pam Caswell, first grade teacher at John M.S. Elementary in Denver, and she has the happy tutor force from CBRE. Thanks, CBRE tutors that are out there. She's taught at John M.S. for 22 years. That's a long time at the same school. She is truly a passionate individual who loves to inspire and motivate her students. She's been very effective at implementing TutorMate, and she had an 89% success rate in her classroom. Wonderful. And we'd love to honor her service. And in that, hello, Mrs. Caswell.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. To start, please give me a little background about yourself and also discuss the demographics of your student body at John M.S.
Okay, thank you. I was born and raised in a small town, Lander, Wyoming, and graduated from the University of Wyoming, which is in Laramie. And I moved down here and just put teaching aside, that there wasn't enough money involved, and so I went to work, as it states up there, for a law firm, thinking I was going to make the big bucks, and it was not my passion. I didn't care for the job at all, and I ended up through a long path going back into teaching, renewing my passion. And as you said, I've been there at John M.S. for 22 years. I taught third grade for 8 years, and then have continued with first grade. I've done TutorMate the last 3 years, and I just want to thank everybody that has participated in this program in some form. It is an amazing program for me, as well as definitely for the kids.
Always good to hear. So in general, you know, why did you get into teaching? I think you sort of hinted on that one, and at least on most days, are you continually happy with your decision in moving into teaching?
I am. I remember when I was little, I'd always play school at a little pretend chalkboard, and so I think, you know, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do teaching. My love for the kids has started, you know, when I was young and continued. And then as I got older, just watching the delight when they're successful is amazing. I do enjoy it still. Teaching has changed a lot as far as what the demand of a teacher, but the thing that hasn't changed is the needs of the kids. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, when I reflect, that's what I always base my reflection on is, you know, did I make a difference in the kiddo's life that day, and were they successful? So, you know, I wanted to be a teacher when I was younger, found some different paths, but I feel I ended up where I need to be. Being at one school for 22 years, for me, is a benefit. The school that I teach at is a low economic, or in a low economic area. We have 94 to 95% of the kids that are on free and reduced lunch. And I just feel that, you know, the stability that I can give those kids and have given the families for the last 22 years is a benefit. And I truly enjoy everything at that school as far as the kids and the parents. A lot of our kids are, the demographics have changed probably within the last 10 years. Quite a few of them are second language learners. And so, you know, reading being such an important part of any child's life, I don't think they get the support at home that they need. A lot of the parents speak the one language and aren't able to support them with the English language. And so providing the English language and the support in the classroom is so important for these kids.
Well, I know we appreciate your loyalty, and I'm sure the community around your school appreciate that longevity that you've had at John MS. Couldn't agree more. And you started to touch on my next question, which is the most common challenges that your kids face in their reading achievement. You touched on their home life. Is there anything else you can add to that?
You know, I go back to what Joe had said about if you're not reading at grade level by third grade, it is going to be a struggle. And so you look at the kids that come in, and we do provide an ECE program starting at the age of 3. Unfortunately, those classes are very limited in the ECE 3-year-old, 4-year-old. There's only 16 kids that can be in a classroom at a time. And so a lot of the kids don't begin school until they're kindergarten just because of the numbers. And again, just the second language learners, a lot of single parent families, grandparents raising their kids, you know, parents working more than one job trying to make ends meet. So the kids come to school, and the joy of it is the majority of the kids are so excited to learn and find their successes in the classroom. So, you know, it does start at home, but I think just what we can do at school in the amount of hours that we have in a day is just so important for these kids, and to really get their confidence up. I think that's huge in order for them to find that success.
And that kind of dovetails into my next question is, what impact have you witnessed from your students that participated in the TutorMate program, both subjectively and objectively?
TutorMate has just been such an incredible program. The kids, and this may go a little bit outside of your question, but the kids just love when it is their day and their time. When that phone rings, I have a greeter. So I have one student that does it for the majority of the year. So she answers the phone, and the kids automatically know their time. So when that phone rings, they just, you know, smile, and you can tell they are ready to go. And so they get back there with such an excitement. And the person on the other line, you know, I've witnessed some of the conversation. They always start out with just a conversation. You know, how was your day? How was your break? What are you know, what's going on in the classroom right now? And they just make the kids feel so welcome. It just develops a friendship from the first minute of the conversation. So, you know, the kids learn how to converse back and forth through, you know, the computer, even though they're not seeing the face, they're having that conversation. And then, of course, they go into the reading, and the kids just feel so successful at the end of their conversation or at the end of their session. And I know it's because of the guidance of the tutor on the other end. And as far as the kids excelling with this program, I feel that they are excelling. We usually take kids that are right on the cusp, just, you know, a little below grade level, and they just need that extra time, that extra push. And so by the end of the year, the majority of the kids have reached grade level, and, you know, we'll continue that as well.
All right, I love it. And in our last minute, just want to know what constructive advice or feedback do you have with the TutorMate community that is on the line right now?
Again, I just can't thank everybody enough. It's so exciting in the classroom to see the kids share what they learned with their TutorMate. And I think just understanding it is only 30 minutes of your day, but it's probably the most important 30 minutes of that day is meeting with the kids, and not only providing the skills for reading, but providing that stability of your phone call and providing that friendship for the kids. I just think it's so important, and as a classroom teacher, to see the excitement and the engaging of the students is beyond explanation. I can't say enough about how important that 30 minutes is.
Thanks. You know, if our tutors could just envision what happens in the classroom, and I think you help to see that when the phone rings and what goes on behind the scenes, it's tremendous. So I thank you for your effort and your work, and your tutor, CBRE, I thank them And we look forward to working with you again next year, Ms. Caswell. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Back to Dan Weisberg here. Thank you too, Ms. Caswell, and thank you to all of our Denver tutors and to our great partnership with Denver Public Schools and the Denver Public Schools Foundation. I'm going to move into some of the milestones. We have still a few more items to cover before we wrap it up. We'll probably go a few minutes over, not too long, we hope. First of all, I just want to let everyone know that those of you who are veteran tutors that we did switch this year. Many of you know that we had an alphabetic reading level system last year. This year we did introduce a numbered system, which we call reading stages, numbered 1 through 9. This new taxonomy was designed by our own IFL experts. It really helps teachers more clearly identify which critical reading skills students should be acquiring as they progress throughout the year. We hope to offer a session in late fall to those tutors who might be more interested in learning about advanced topics related to reading stages. Secondly, I mentioned earlier that some of the Boeing stories had science themes, which we've just introduced. Here's a specific glimpse at just how some of these exciting new stories look on the screen. If you work at a company where STEM education is a key focus area, our TutorMate literacy work can now integrate with those goals quite well. So here's a quick, you can see the galaxy, the Milky Way example, the ChemLab example, etc. These stories are a lot of fun and a great addition. Some of the enhancements which we're looking forward to adding for the new school year, which we plan to develop over the summer. Number one is we want to add additional STEM content like you just saw, but we want to also make sure that we're featuring scientists of diverse ethnicity and diverse genders. We want to also improve our messaging between teachers and tutors and do that in two particular ways. One that we're studying is to try to make sure that you all receive an email notifying you if your teacher has sent you a message, or if we here at IFL have sent you a message. Perhaps it's a snow day in your particular district and you didn't realize that, or the kids were out on a field trip and the teacher sends a message in the morning. It'd be great if our tutors could receive an email to let them know that there's a message awaiting them. So that's one thing we wish to add, and possibly even send that message to your text facility on your cell phone if you choose to opt into that capability. So that's something we're hoping to add this fall. And lastly, tutor logs. We plan to provide a diary within TutorMate so that you can make notes for yourself to help you in recalling issues from earlier sessions. You'll likely have the option of keeping these private or of sending your log entry to the teacher if you prefer. Okay, so those of you who've been around with TutorMate for a long time know that we once had that in our older system, and we hope to re-add that again with our new system. Overall, what's our strategic direction here at TutorMate? Well, Seth will address most of this shortly with you. We do primarily want to remain focused on what we do well here, which is early grade literacy. Sometimes we get asked to move to higher grades or to other subject areas, but we do want to stick to our core knitting, as the saying goes, and really instead try to impact more kids in more at-risk communities, but around early grade reading. Being scalable quickly is the key mantra here. We do want to grow our nonprofit partnerships continually. We want to involve more tutoring organizations, serving more high-need schools and school districts. We're primarily focusing on the top 40 metro areas, and we continue to study the impact of TutorMate and see how we can improve its outcomes. In that particular regard, we did run a study this past school year, the one that ended last spring, and we determined in that study that students who get about 16 or more tutoring sessions on average saw about a 15% average gain in their reading scores versus their low or no tutor or non-tutored peers. So clearly the more sessions that you can squeeze in, the better the impact will be. You do make a significantly measurable difference. While we do start some tutors, of course, after New Year's, our best scenario is seen when we start tutors in the fall, and so we do hope that all of you can join again this coming fall, and we'll talk a little bit about our timeline shortly. These are our TutorMate recruitment goals, broadly speaking, for the coming year. We had about 3,100 tutors across the U.S., and if we add in some of the new cities that we're expecting to launch in the fall, we would like to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 to 4,200 tutors this coming year, and be active in about 400 to 425 classrooms. And so this gives you a more particular breakdown around the specific cities so that you can get a sense of of how strong an impact TutorMate is in your own particular metro area. Okay, it's time now to recognize some of our special tutors this past year. Heather Kemenier, our National Tutoring Coordinator, will take over on this very exciting component of the program.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So we have many, many exceptional tutors, and we wish that we could single out all of you, but we don't want to be here all day, so we just selected a few of you to honor. So first we have most dedicated, Mary Monroy Spampanato, sorry Mary. And Mary had 27 successful sessions this year, and in addition to tutoring, she also helped lead a team of dedicated Microsoft tutors as the coordinator. So thank you so much, Mary, for all of your hard work. Next, we have David Reuter for most enthusiastic tutor. David would send long, detailed messages to his teacher after each session, and he left great feedback every week. So thank you so much for doing that, David. A couple of honorable mentions that we have. We want to honor Jay Andropoulos and Jody Mejia. Jay attempted 54 sessions this year. Not all of his sessions were successful for various reasons, but he continued to try multiple times in a week if necessary to reach his student. And Jody had about 23 successful sessions throughout the year, and she was very committed to filling out the feedback form each week. And then as an above and beyond mention, we have Sylvia Lee, and she tutored 2 students this year and had a good 15 sessions with each of them. We know that we have some other tutors who also worked with 2 students, and we want to thank all of you as well. You all really went above and beyond. And then here we have a list of our most consistent tutors. These are tutors that started tutoring in the fall and called nearly every week for the rest of the school year, and they had a minimum of 24 sessions throughout the year. So if you see your name here, you're a star, and great job. And now we just want to talk about our fall timeline. We're going to have registration open on July 5th this summer, and everyone will need to register again, even if you tutored this past school year. And then the first training for new tutors will be the week of September 20th, and returning tutors are always welcome to join if they'd like, but we will have our refresher video available again for returning tutors. And then tutoring will start in late September or early October, and we'll be launching classrooms on a rolling basis like we usually do. So next, I would like to turn things over to my colleague, Marissa Trevisan, to say a few words next.
Thank you, Heather. Excellent. I'll try to move through these quickly, knowing that we're coming up short on time. For those of you who are interested, we offer meet and greets as an opportunity to get together with fellow tutors in your city. These are informal social meetups where you can share your experience with other tutors in your local community, regardless of your company affiliation, and you can contact me, Marissa, with any interest, and I can help you coordinate these events. We're always looking to hear from you, our tutors. If you have any specific issues, please continue to contact our tutor coordinator, Heather. And for testimonials and stories about your experience with TutorMate, please reach out to me at marissa@tutormate.org or my email address listed in the previous slide, marissa@innovationsforlearning.org. I'd also like to encourage everyone to engage with us on social media. As you'll see, here are some examples of recent tweets and postings on our Facebook page. We'd love for you to share the impact you're making. And if you haven't already, we would ask that you follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn and like us on Facebook. And IFL will be creating a tutor group on LinkedIn, so please look out for that soon. And continue sharing your stories on social media so that the TutorMate community and the community at large can see all of the wonderful things you're doing to support early education and early readers. Another great way to get involved is by writing a guest blog. We're currently posting an article about once per month and are looking to increase that frequency with your help. If you enjoy writing, please consider becoming a guest contributor like CEO Dick Weil of Janus Capital Group, pictured in this post.
Great, thank you very much, Marissa. And Dan Weisberg, once again, we are moving into the very last agenda item for today's webinar, so I want to thank all of you for sticking around. We're probably going to run a little bit longer than we had hoped, but I think it will be well worth sticking around if you can do that, because we're turning the program over to Seth Weinberger, who is our founder and executive director. He's also the co-founder of the Cherry Preschool in Evanston, and he's a senior counsel to the international law firm Mayer Brown, where he's been a member of its global IT practice for 25 years. Welcome, Seth.
Hello.
Great. So if you want to just talk a little bit just broadly about where we're headed from your perspective as executive director, and then we're going to invite the audience to type in some of their questions using the GoToWebinar interface, and we will submit those questions to you and let you respond to those individually.
Well, first I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who has tutored this year, and especially this group who's shown their passion in so many ways, including being on this webinar. You are the passionate 20% of the passionate thousands that actually participate with us, and so we're really thankful for that. And that is a word, passion, that has been used a lot today, and it can be hollow, but I think it's actually underused and underutilized. We think that we can tap into the passion of students, teachers, and tutors a lot more. We have just scratched the surface. And you may have heard this about us before, plans. This year we are definitely going to start demoing, bringing parents into the system. And parents will act as tutors and hopefully, again, connected to our system. So tutors, parents, teachers, students are all on the same page, all working together for the benefit of the students. So we certainly will not launch this in all cities this year. It'll just be a few selected ones on a trial basis. But if it all works out, then the following school year, it will be launched everywhere.
Very good. Okay. So, folks, you can all just type in your questions as they might occur to you. I know that we have one here from John Knapp. What IFL technology changes are planned for next year that you believe are substantial?
Well, one of the things that we are trying to do is not make a ton of changes to our platform so that we can, start the year earlier and more successful. And in many years, we haven't really been able to start until late October, November. As you heard from Heather, we're really going to try to get registration starting and school starting in early September and late September and into October. And everything that we are doing, we are becoming web-based in what we're doing. And that allows us to make changes on the fly in real time. And it's going to allow us to integrate our different offerings better. And we're also going to have more reporting than ever before as to what's happening with the districts. And again, the internet enables that. So we're really finally taking advantage of the internet infrastructure that we've created. But the actual technology we use, the WebSockets approach, the Skype, at this point, none of that is changing. It seems to work well enough for our purposes, and we're going to keep it for another year.
Great. Are there any plans to have a FaceTime-like function in the future?
Yeah, so we've talked about having face ability, video ability. It can be a pretty big bandwidth hog at the school level, sometimes even at the corporate level. We've talked about having, pictures at least that we could put on or small videos so that you would have, facial identification. At some point, certainly in better high bandwidth schools, we may be able to do that. I definitely understand where that would be an advantage.
Great. We have a question from John Knapp. I see the biggest challenge is getting the support from the teachers to make sure the computer is ready and available for the tutors to have successful sessions. Would you agree?
That is certainly one of the biggest. I mean, part of this is a mutual understanding of the other kind of thing. Teachers have to understand what the tutors are going through and how difficult it is to tutor, right? And to have that time and to make it available, and that they really need to have their computer on in the morning and their schedule ready to be there on time, just as much as the tutors have to understand the teacher's perspective and how things can go crazy in a classroom, and there's a lot of unpredictability, and the noise level can go up sometimes beyond the teacher's reasonable control. And so a lot of our job is really to explain the situation to each side. But we've really increased our support of teachers in the last year, and that's going to increase even more next year. We started a program called our Program Ambassadors that we have brought in to every city that we serve to actually work with the teachers. Before this, the support that we provided in many cities was just tech support. And that was important to keep the plumbing on, but it didn't necessarily get the kind of teacher buy-in that we wanted and the full support of the teachers. With these program ambassadors, their job is to really get that buy-in, and I think they've improved the buy-in, and I think you guys have seen that this year already in terms of the success rate, but this year was just getting started. It's going to be even better next year. A lot of these relationships have now been formed. We're going to have even more PA hours, program ambassador hours. I think it's going to be a big, important part of this solution.
Great. Melinda Anderson, one of our favorite folks at Microsoft, said, "Don't you have a Skype feature that's similar to the Facebook feature already?" And of course, I know the answer there is we do use Skype, but if Skype is for audio purposes at the moment. We're not using the Skype video feature by design.
Same issue that the Skype video would be a higher bandwidth hog than the Skype audio. So it's not a technology problem. The technology definitely exists to do video conferencing, just a bandwidth issue.
Okay. And then we have Patrick Hanlon is saying, is there any format or mechanism for sharing the results of our students' improvements? You know, is there a consideration for tracking the students and maintaining any contact after the single tutoring year?
So those are two different questions. As we increase the reporting capabilities, you're going to be able to see a lot more information about how your student is doing. And so that's going to give you more sense of your student's progress. In terms of after the school year, of somehow either staying in touch or seeing what's happening with the student, that is definitely a long-term goal of ours. And it kind of ties back to the passion point that I think people do become very connected with their students and would like to stay involved. And there's really a number of possible ways to do that, maybe many of them asynchronously rather than the synchronous connection that we have in first grade. So it is on the drawing board. I'm not going to promise when it's going to happen, but we definitely want to do it.
Okay. Would there be any way we could figure out about the noise level? We could manage the noise level in the classroom or schedule in the tutoring sessions when the teachers are not teaching the other students. The noise in the classroom is very distracting. This is from Ashley. The classroom is very distracting for the students as well as those of us who tutor. Thank you for all of your help. The program is awesome.
So let me just say before I answer this, I know we're running over, so whenever anyone needs to drop out, please do so. And again, thank you, but I'll keep answering questions until the last question is there, so we can keep this going. But thanks everyone for participating. But in terms of the noise level question, you should definitely indicate to Heather if you believe that the noise level is too much, and Heather will discuss that again through our program ambassadors or directly with the teachers. To some extent, if a teacher hears concerns, he or she can make adjustments and become more cognizant of it. But again, as I said a little earlier, noise is endemic to a first grade classroom, and some teachers believe in more noise than others, and it would be a big impediment to their style of teaching if we put too much of a restriction on them. If it gets to the point where there's just too much noise for you to hear or for your student to hear, and the teacher can't accommodate that, then we have to talk about a different classroom to do this program in. There are a few classrooms that simply because of the noise, they're inappropriate.
Great. Okay, one question we have is from a particular company, why did we start late? For United Airlines, we didn't start until January, and that certainly can happen. We had a slower start this year, particularly in the Chicago market, because we had an ambassador who actually departed the company unexpectedly right when we were launching. So we did have a delay. So those of you who are on the call from Chicago and noticed that you were delayed in your launch this year, that won't be happening this fall. We can guarantee it, and we apologize for the slower start for some of our Chicago tutors. Jane, let's see. Edgar Meyer is asking, if a location already has a program ambassador, is there a need for any additional ambassadors?
As we grow, we may have need for multiple ambassadors in one city. Our general concept to try to keep the cost of the program down is to use part-time ambassadors, part-time people who are, you know, in early retirement, looking for opportunities, mommy and daddy tracks, whatever that they have extra hours to give. We find we can utilize these folks very efficiently, keep the costs down, and we will be needing multiple of these folks in our larger cities as we grow.
Great. John Knapp is asking, apologies if this is already available, but I think it would be helpful for the tutors to have a help document that shows what the students see on the screen so that we may be able to help the student rather than having to contact the IFL Tech support.
Well, we can definitely put into our help documentation what the screens look like. It would even be possible to mirror the screen. We've talked about this, that the student has on your screen, so you'd have sort of a split screen that you could see what the student is seeing and what they are. Now that it might not be exactly right that that's what the student would be seeing, but we could come close. So we have talked about that. It's a good idea.
Absolutely, and I'm going to add too that I don't want to have tutors be hesitant in any way to contact our IFL Tech support. It really is. That's really the key success ingredient, we think, to make this program work week after week. We have a great staff that I mentioned at the top of the call, Eugene, Letitia, and Chris, and led by Jackie. So they're there to help, and we do believe that quite a few of our sessions sometimes are unsuccessful because tutors forget about the fact that they can click on the chat button and have someone to launch their sessions. Now, it's not a guarantee. Sometimes there are things out of their control, but probably 3 out of 4 times our chat desk is quite successful at getting sessions off the ground that tutors initially have trouble with. So let me just add that comment to Sess. Francine says, Francine Alexander, I just want to thank TutorMate for sending books out to the school this year. Very nice. Thank you very much, Francine. And again, thank you to Janice as well from our standpoint. Melissa says, can tutors submit a teacher's name to be honored in the future?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Please do.
Yes, we would welcome that. Thank you. Shondalyn is asking, is it possible to tutor and also to be a part-time ambassador? And if so, how do you apply to be an ambassador?
Well, yes, in theory it's possible. If you're working full-time at your corporation, then it's really not possible to be a program ambassador because it requires you to be at the school at school hours. But if you are getting to a point where you have that availability, you could send an information to to Heather the way you do any message to Heather, and she'll get that information to us.
Great. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I see. And so we're just about 13 minutes after the hour. So I want to thank all of you who are remaining on the call with us for your attention throughout, and encourage you to sign up again, of course, this coming fall. Once again, registration will be open on July the 5th. You'll hear more about that through your coordinators. And if you are a coordinator, please contact Kerry. You'll see his email right here on the page. And if you have friends and relatives who are working for large employers, we're interested, of course, in enhancing our tutoring ranks through these large companies who are able to help us recruit a lot more efficiently and effectively. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We thank everyone on the call, and with that, we're going to sign out. Bye-bye now.